Today we're here, and I have a very special guest I'm about to introduce, but we're here with an important topic, and that is where is the real estate market headed? But in order to talk about where it's headed, one of the things I want to do is talk about where it's been. So when I think about where the market's been in the past 3, 4, 5 decades, one of the first people that pops into my head is my dad, Dennis Walsh. He is a real estate educator. He's been a contractor. He's been a remodeler. He had a panelized home factory. Everything A to Z. He was literally, as a baby, laying around near sawdust with his family as construction workers in the past. So he's literally been around sawdust since he was born. I'm going to bring on my special guest, Dennis Walsh.
Well, how are you, man?
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you. First thing I'll mention, number one, is we actually did not plan to have similar shirts on. It just happened.
It just happens, right?
Thankfully, not the same color. And unfortunately, it happens many times where we
Right.
meet each other at events and have the
The
same shirts
special
on.
event, right? We show up identical. So, hey, it's great to be here. When you first reached out, I said, man, this guy, I think I know this guy. He sounds familiar. But no, I'm really happy to be here. This is going to be fun because think about how often you and I spend hour after hour, talking about real estate, where it's been, where it's going, what's happening, sorting it all out. So this is fun.
Well, and it's easy for me to take it for granted because I grew up with you from a young age. You were always exposing me to the motivational speakers, Zig
Right?
Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Anthony Robbins. In fact, that's how you know how long someone has been following motivational speaking. They call him Anthony Robbins and not Tony Robbins. That's you've
There
been
you
you've
go.
been
That's
following
it.
him for a while. But so it's easy for me to take that for granted. Plus all the construction knowledge, and we have these amazing fun talks about real estate. So I'm glad you remembered me. I'm glad when I sent the
That's
invite,
a good sign, isn't
and
it?
I'm glad you came on. So excited to have you here. So a little bit of housekeeping first. We got Michelle in the background. She's going to be helping out with comments and making sure that when we get to that 3 or 4 hour mark that we stop talking. And she'll keep us in line. So make sure you put your comments in. In fact, we already have a comment. I'll bring that up. Melody, great to see you as well. Thanks for stopping in to see
Hi,
me and my
Mel.
dad.
How
We
are
appreciate it.
you? Hey,
So
we
make
love
sure
our Mel.
we do. So make sure you post your comments and questions along the way. But first off, just give me a quick rundown. Like I said, you've been around construction your entire life. You didn't want me to actually put how many decades that you've been doing it, but tell me your very first experiences with real estate growing up.
Wow. Yeah, that's it's I can't do tell you this very quickly. It's a long story, but
That's why I said the 3 or 4 hours.
exactly. Well, you already talked about when I came home from the hospital. My parents had a home under construction, so all I knew as an infant, as I was growing up, was a house that was still part of it still in framing, studs, insulation hanging out of the walls. So I grew up my whole life being the helper, and of course, remembering back to your grandfather, I remember him doing the same thing with you and your brother, making sure you understood all the tools and what did what. And you were always a helper there, not necessarily because he needed a helper, but he just wanted to teach us, all about construction. So that was very, very young. And then, of course, your great grandfather, the same thing. We were on a corner of his 80-acre farm, and that's where my parents built that home.
Well, and real fast to interrupt so
Yeah,
people know,
no,
it
please.
wasn't beautiful Southern California like we are both in right
Oh,
now.
no, no,
This was very small town Ohio.
very small town.
Had 4, 5, or 6 seasons back there, I think.
Yeah, in a day, right? Right. Well, the seasons there, they said, were almost winter, still winter, and construction, right? So so
Well,
everything.
that's that's the perfect segue. So let's jump forward from
Yes,
being on great grandpa's farm. But
yeah.
you were how old were you when you started actually swinging the hammer and doing construction?
Well, even yeah, again, very, very young. So I two grandfathers, and they always had projects going. On my mom's side, my grandfather was building homes, and it was a very slow process. He was a brilliant guy, just a mechanical genius, inventor, all that sort of thing. And he would be building a home very slowly. And he would then put that up for sale in the one he was living in, whichever one sold, then he'd build another home. So as a boy, my cousins and I, when we were not in school, we weren't, we still had time to play around and have fun, but we were working on grandpa's projects. So when I was young, it was picking up all the scraps and cleaning up. Then it was hauling hardwood floor over. And bit by bit, I learned all the trades, how to lay up block, how to run electrical, the basics of plumbing and sweating copper joints and carpentry and all those things. So all through school. And then your grandfather, my father, always had projects at home and would teach us the same thing. When I was 14, I realized that, prior to this, I was doing a paper route mowing grass. And I realized, you know what? I've got some skills here, man. I can earn a little bit more money doing more sophisticated projects. So I started doing remodeling for people in the neighborhood. So I made flyers and sent those out, and people would hire me. And being tall, they didn't realize I was only 14. When
I
it came
think you
time
had
to
a
start the job,
mustache. You had a mustache by then too, at
yeah,
14, I think.
probably, yeah, and really ugly. So they said this can't be a kid, and so I'd show up on the first day with my wagon filled with tools, and they'd think like, "What have we done?" So since that age, ever since my life's been revolving around construction, as you indicated. I did all kinds of carpentry and framing and custom cabinet making, all those things. When I first started as a general contractor and a home builder, my crew and I would literally we'd pour the footers, lay up the foundation, frame the house, wire it, plumb it, roof it, all the trades. And as time went on as a custom builder, like other builders, I started to hire subcontractors for those specialty areas. So the custom building, as you indicated, we had the manufactured or factory built housing business, building wall panels, trusses, material sales. That business grew to the point where there were 70 employees. We were shipping all up and down the eastern United States. And of course, that's where a lot of your experience, either running around on the job sites with me in the pickup truck. You probably remember as a boy playing around in the factory, rolling on the conveyors and stuff, you and your brother.
Oh yeah, I do. And so people understand too. Panelized home, it's a type of modular construction. So what they would do in the factory is you guys would be building entire walls.
Right.
How tall? Like, what was the tallest plate you guys could have? Was it
Well,
10 foot?
we tipped up to 12 foot tall was about the
Holy
tallest
cow,
wall.
that's
We could,
amazing.
yeah, we could build because, you had to ship it down the road. So you
Yeah.
had to meet, the weight and the height limitations. But most were 8 to 10 foot walls, and then gable end walls, the triangular shape that went up.
I
Back
remember the
then,
truss compressor. So you
yeah,
had this thing. It was
right,
a machine hanging from the ceiling. It was hydraulic,
right.
and it would basically, when you're building trusses, you put these plates in the wood, and then that thing would squeeze it. That scared
Yeah,
me.
the plates are
That
called
thing,
gussets, and they
gusset
got
plates. That's right.
right, and they punch the metal. It's got little sharp pieces that sink into the wood. And you and your brother actually used to help with that. The guys would set up the cords. That's what you call the top component that on a truss, the bottom cord, the webs, the angle pieces. So the guys would set those all in place in a jig that we had, and then you and your brother would go around and place the little metal gussets. We're probably breaking some labor laws, I guess, but
Yes, we were very, very young, but
very involved, right?
it was. I still remember it. I still remember the thing that squeezed them
Yes.
together. The
Yeah, you
rope.
could
Yeah,
hurt yourself. You could hurt yourself pretty
yeah, that's what
quickly.
scared me. The giant radial arm saw.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was.
Yeah.
How big was the blade on
It was
that
a
thing?
20-inch blade with a 20 horsepower motor on it. So
That's insane.
it would stop. We would literally put a bunk of lumber up there. So in the factory, the whole concept there was efficiencies, right?
Yeah.
And you'd set up your material so you didn't have to handle on the job site. You've got to haul everything from wherever the heck the lumber was dumped, up onto the site, handling it. Here we would have forklifts and we'd minimize handling, but you'd put up a whole bunk of studs, and if they had to be cut to a certain length, that saw would just like butter through all those studs, and everything was perfection.
Well, and that's it. Perfection. You're not dealing with the seasons of
Hey,
that you mentioned. Everything done in the factory could be done perfectly measured.
right,
Put it on a truck, send it. You were sending them down to Florida at that time, I
right,
remember. And then a story for a different time. You didn't. The trucks took down the parts, but you didn't want to waste the trip back, so you were bringing watermelons back.
Yeah,
I
I got in the
remember that.
watermelon business, but you're right. That's
Yeah,
another
yeah, which
long,
was
painful story.
we'll go to that
Okay.
in a future point. But that's the advantage with the panelized construction. Similar to what we're seeing for a lot of ADUs, people want the modular construction, or panelized as well would work for that. So what's interesting is seeing stuff you were doing. Was this the 80s you were doing this? You had the
Right,
factory in the 80s? So you
right,
were doing it back then, and now it's kind of had a renaissance, particularly because of accessory dwelling units, cost of construction, et cetera. Like, so we're seeing modular construction, panelized construction come back again. So it's
right,
funny. It's and I we talked about this before. It's almost like in some cases, in some respects, there's nothing new in the business. It's
right.
just looked at like a different. It has a different way of being looked at,
Yeah, there's an
and
awful lot
they
of
do an
things like that. Yeah,
they
as
do an IPO with it now. You couldn't
right,
do an IPO back
right,
then.
right. That's right. And you couldn't market it either on Amazon or on YouTube or whatever it may be. Right. It was
Yeah.
that
So,
I
what were the interest rates then when you were building the custom homes in the 80s? Just curious.
Yeah, so interest rates were typically, at least double digits. Interest rates were typically, and what numbers are you showing there? You've got
I'm pulling it up. So
okay,
this is from Freddie Mac, and this is very accurate. Goes pretty far back. So here we are in the 80s, and
okay. So you see
the
where they were up
peak.
there. Yeah, the peak we had in the Midwest, I believe we hit about 18% or so on
Yeah,
a 30-year
this
fixed
is
rate.
showing
Oh,
18.63%.
there you go. Okay.
So
Yeah.
you're
So
not making that up. That's true.
right. So now it was interesting because I'll never forget. Tree, my wife, was in the mortgage business back then, and she remembers where the lenders would have one time a year where they would offer an 8% fixed 30-year fixed rate for first-time home buyers, and people would camp out for a week to hopefully take advantage of that. When those I was doing custom building at the time those rates hit that high level, the thing that's interesting I always say is even though everybody complains about interest rates now and a lot of people in the business, how are we ever going to sell homes? We still sold homes. Now it was more challenging, but the reality is people want to own a home. They need a place to live.
Yeah.
And even though it was more costly, and they said, well, maybe our return on investment is less, they still believe that in the long run, as it's proven, right, in the long run, that will be a good investment. You have to keep in mind too, Christian, is that when those interest rates for the mortgage rates are high, that also impacts the cost of construction and other aspects, right?
Yeah.
So, as a home builder, I had a relationship back then. It was a savings and loan, and if I had a signed contract, and of course, I was able to do a certain number of spec homes every year, but I would get a construction loan, a separate construction loan for clients. If we had it pre-sold, we'd get a construction permanent. So it'd be a construction loan that would roll over into their permanent mortgage. But
Okay.
as a builder, most of mine were done with construction loans. So that would be whatever the prime rate was plus 2 or 2.5 points. That would be my rate. Now imagine as you're building a home and those rates keep going up and
Yeah.
going up, and it kind of suppresses the market on the buy side, but it's increasing your costs, right?
Well, and that's it. So this handy chart where we're talking about interest rates, these darker bands here, these are recessions. So you can see the old 1-2 punch
Right,
in the late 70s and 80s, and that's when you were getting your business off the ground. So
right,
not the best planning, like me starting out my real estate sales career in the global financial crisis.
right. Like
You
the
and I,
100-year recession, right?
yeah, we maybe we don't have the best timing. The good news is we're still alive for the most
Well,
part.
like the old saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." So I think
Yeah.
you
Now,
know, yeah,
one of the major differences I will say, and we've talked about this as well, is affordability. So while interest rates were at this height, um, things theoretically were more affordable.
correct,
Although what's interesting is I was trying to find like affordability statistics. You can only go back a certain amount. Be interesting to find statistics so that I could go back further and compare the affordability in the 80s and 90s to today to see how as a percentage of income and where things were for income and And it wouldn't be apples to apples because the mortgage industry's changed as well.
Right.
Debt to income ratios, Fannie, Freddie, et cetera. So here, this is from Melody. Thanks again, Melody, for being here. So Melody bought my first home in '83 at 13.5%. It was bond money, and we thought we struck gold.
I'll
That's
bet.
amazing, Mel.
I'll
Thirteen and a
bet.
half percent. I mean, as long as here, let me pull that chart back
And see,
up.
I can't, Melody, as young as you are, I can't even remember or imagine you can remember back that far. But
She is. She is. So I've been actively selling real estate since the global financial crisis. So I got my license, I think it was '08, June of '08, if I remember correctly, and then started selling in '09. So basically, the highest up until recently that I've dealt with interest rates while actively selling real estate, the highest looks like it was about close to 5.5, and until we hit this year, and then all bets are off. So that's interesting to see too, how long we've had such a low interest rate environment. I mean, you have to go back, let's see, go back to get to 7. You have to go back to 2001 to get to the interest rates where they are now.
right.
Isn't that's a 2 decades. So 2 decades of buyers have not had to deal with 7% or higher interest rates.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? And who would
Yeah.
ever imagine, back in those days when we had those 18% interest rates, right? And it had a heck of an impact on the business. It's estimated that about a third of the builders, all the workers, construction workers, and so on, about a third of the industry kind of disappeared during that time. Just fed up with the ups and downs, and fed up with the challenges and keeping food on the table. But looking back and realizing that the lesson we learned over time was that people are going to need housing. They're going to find a way, and it
Yeah.
often has to do with just redefining what that housing looks like. We're seeing a tremendous activity in that area today, right? People redefining what home means, how they're willing to live, whether it be density, square footage, designs, and so on. So we continue to see, I guess it's the adaptability, right? You touched quickly, you talked on the affordability factor. And it's interesting because there's so many other things beyond that. I'd love to see if somebody could really dig in. I've seen a few studies on that, but you've got to look at everything that relates to the cost of living, right? The cost
Yeah.
of food and clothing and automobiles and gasoline. And I honestly do believe that overall, we have greater challenges today as far as affordability relative to income, right? Relative to the overall cost of living. And one of the big factors there is that it's not just materials and labor, it's what's happened to the cost of land.
Yes. Well, 100%. And it's the for areas like California, Southern California, where it takes 10, 15, 20 years to get a big project and 100 or more homes entitled because of all the different environmental
Right.
concerns, all the red tape, all the impact fees that they add on. You and I have talked about that,
Exactly.
where it can add $60,000 or more to each home in a major tract, just for impact fees. So you're already, as a builder developer, and I know everybody likes to say, oh, builder developers are greedy. But when you look at those numbers, you start to realize, hey, there's not much skin on here, or not much meat on this bone.
No, exactly.
And you see why they have to build the more expensive homes to theoretically have something that pencils. If you have 60,000 in impact fees, plus the cost of the land, plus the cost of construction, which is easily, I mean, easily $200 or more. And that's for a public builder. It's very tough for a public builder to build for less than 200 a square foot right now. So you start to add all those up, and again, not much meat on the bone.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a very, very difficult business, and it's certainly gotten more sophisticated today. Technology has allowed us to manage cost and communication and have higher levels of efficiency. But there's been a tremendous amount of attrition as well. Prior to the Great Recession, more than 70% of all the homes in America were built by smaller builders. And by smaller builders, the National Association of Home Builders defines small builders as 25 homes or less a year. And many of those builders were 5, 10, maybe 15 home builders. So that was the majority of construction that went on for the longest time. We've seen a massive shift. and now a whole lot more. And I haven't seen the latest statistics, but more than 50% of all the homes in America, the last I saw, are built by the top, say, 200 builders in the nation. That's a
Yeah.
sea change.
Yeah.
And it's a result of a lot of these things. The large builders have the ability maybe to negotiate on land. They've got the ability to find funds for the purchase, carrying. A lot of those things have become more sophisticated than they were years ago when a small builder would simply go to a savings and loan, and get a construction loan or
Yeah, it would be a handshake back then, and it was a personal
yeah,
relationship.
exactly.
You had a good relationship with this local savings and loan, so you
Yeah.
were able to build. So now would be a good time to mention. So my dad, and I used to work with him in the business. My dad's now a professional real estate trainer, real estate educator. Got out of swinging the hammer in the snow, which is one of the smartest moves you made. Got into the education business. Has several different courses, including the residential construction certified, which these are courses that are actually based for real estate agents, but consumers could check them out as well. There's fascinating stuff in the courses. So there's residential construction certified, where it talks about pieces and parts of the home, like the gusset plates, cords, webs, etc., all throughout the United States, the different construction. There's certified new home specialist, where you're talking about builders right now. The certified new home specialist is a real estate agent who either works for a builder, for example, sits on site, or helps a smaller builder grow their business, or works with buyers. So you can actually market yourself as a certified new home specialist who knows all the new home neighborhoods and will help buyers make the best decisions. Most recent course is residential remodeling specialist. And so let's get into remodeling. And then, Melody, I want to bring up some of your comments. You have some more great comments to make. But as well, in fact, actually, that's a good segue. Hold on. Let's pull up Melody's comment.
Yeah, I said we'll just say that. Yeah.
So, not this one, this other one. So Melody was saying it's a shock for buyers that bought at 2.9 and then want a house they can afford at 6 or 7%. So we now are in a market where a lot of folks are rate locked.
Mhm.
They're stuck at 2.5 to 3, which is not a bad thing to be stuck at. And if they're going to go out and buy something else, their interest rate is going to double. Not to mention the values have still gone up 10 to 20% in some markets in
Somewhere.
that same time. So your payment's going to triple in
Right.
many cases. So there's a lot of folks are going to stay put unless they absolutely have to move. This is definitely influencing the market now. And now this is part of where we can start to talk about where the market's headed. And this is a good segue, I think, into your last course, the residential remodeling specialist. I think a lot of people, if you're locked in a home at 3%, you're going to make that home work for you for a long time.
Right.
So your newest course helps real estate agents, but it again could help the general public better understand how to navigate the remodeling process. So I'll let you further explain.
Yeah, so just to build on a few things you said there. So we see an awful lot of people. I mean, we hear the term rate locked, but the truth is, like anything else, that's a decision or a choice people make. And yes, I'd like to hold on to this low interest rate, but at the same time, um, at some point, like you say, people have to move, or people say, look, somewhere between the difference in cost between X number of dollars at this interest rate and X number of dollars at that interest rate, somewhere along the line, I have to make a decision relative to my quality of life.
Yeah.
How does this impact my family? And you watch a family grow up, and suddenly a home that you have at a great interest rate is just not enough home. And then, Chris, think about the sea change we had here with the pandemic, where suddenly people are working at home, and maybe mom and dad are both working at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that home that was working just fine when everybody got in the car and drove away every day is suddenly driving them crazy, and they want private outdoor space, and maybe
Or aging of America. I mean, you
exactly.
happen to be a young Papa Den. That's his name. He's a grandpa. I've got 4 kids. He's he has 4 grandkids by default. Simple math. So he goes by Papa Den. But so not everybody looks as good as Papa Den and is in great shape.
Oh boy.
Some older generations are moving in with the younger generations, and then some younger generations, with the cost of everything out there, are moving in with the older generation.
That's
So
right.
a
That's right.
lot more multi-generational living than probably we've seen in history.
Yeah, so those are some of the dynamics, right? So we have, let's talk about that real quick. The aging of America. Um, it's something like 49% of all home buyers today are seniors, right? They're over the age of 65, actually. And when we talk about seniors in the housing business, that's, a category where things really start to change dramatically. We typically talk about people 55 and older, right? The 55 active retirement communities, all that sort of thing. I know when I turned 55 and I suddenly said, wow, I'm a senior. I wasn't quite in that mindset, ready for that.
Yeah, I'm not 50 yet, but when I get to 50, I'm not going to be a senior at
No,
55.
you're just not going to let that happen either. So, um, but the point is, we have so many people in that age group who life is changing. You can't control it to a point, and your needs change, and the support you need changes. So here's this group. The majority are not living in homes that are ideal for their needs. So to your point, they're going to either have to move, they're going to have to do an aging in place type solution, or aging in place along with multi-generational. Currently, 20% of all the households in America are multi-generational. That's a big segment of housing. Most people aren't aware of that, but it's bursting at the seams. As we travel and talk to real estate professionals, right, in our sessions, conventions, I'll ask a room full of agents, how many of you have clients looking for good, workable multi-generational solutions? Every hand in the room goes up.
Well, and to that point, let's think about you building homes in the 80s.
Right.
Was multi-generational housing even a minor thought at all back then?
It
There
was
was,
minor. Yeah, it was a minor thought. I did a few. I
yeah,
did a few where we either built the suite. More often, what we did, Christian, was we built the home. Remember, my concept of homes to grow, right? Home to grow.
yeah. But
We
that was
built a
unique
home.
to
We
you.
designed it to grow. But
Yeah.
you're right. What was that? 2% of all buyers. Yeah,
It's safe to say at least 80s and before, there was almost zero thought
right.
about
You're right.
multi-generational
You're
housing.
right.
So we have, and you know the statistics better than me. How old is the average house in America roughly?
For roughly 42 years,
So
41,
42 years.
42
So
years.
that literally puts it in the 80s ish.
Mhm.
And the average home in America has zero thought about multi-generational
Well,
housing.
that's it. When I ask those agents, every hand goes up in the room. Yeah, we're looking for multi-generational solutions. How many of you have inventory in your market? No hands go up. We
Yeah.
just don't. So it's a massive, massive need. Now, home builders have recognized that, and
Yeah.
many home builders are developing in their developments, offering plans that are intended for multi-generational. But again, it's a very small segment of the market. Quite a few of the multi-generational homes that builders design for that purpose are actually being gobbled up by people looking to turn that suite into a home office or a couple of home offices,
Yeah. Or an Airbnb.
or an Airbnb. And of course, you mentioned the ADUs right earlier
Yeah.
as a big solution. So, but again, back to the dynamic. So you've got the aging of America. Oh, here's another one that's kind of interesting: the aging in place. We're working with a fella who's building a specialized business to come in, help people analyze their needs for aging in place, and then coordinate the right contractors, the right products and materials. Very, very cool. He surprised himself how quickly his business is growing, how big the demand is. What's
Yeah.
interesting though is once people get to that point, you're often dealing with the children, not necessarily always the parents themselves, right? Uh,
Yeah.
he says within a year or two, most of the people who go through that aging in place renovation end up putting the home on the market and realizing they need to either move into a full multi-generational situation or assisted
Or
living.
assisted living. Yeah. Here, I'm going to pull up another comment from Mel. Mel, thanks for tuning in and being so loquacious. I appreciate that. Saw recently that there are builders who are now building developments that are all rentals to assist with affordability, and they're full as soon as they're done. I think there's one in San Fran. What's our take on the BTR, the build to rent? And what I'll interject, and then I'll let you take this one,
Sure.
pop it in. So, I had a friend uh, as the global financial crisis was ending. He was working. Lehman Brothers had gone under, and he was helping them. He was helping a group liquidate all the Lehman Brothers assets. And I always thought it was funny. And I joked with him, and like, your job is done when you've sold everything they have. His job is to put himself out of a job, which I thought was
Right.
hysterical.
That's it.
But
Yeah.
he, even back then, so this was 2010, 11, maybe 12. They were looking at the BTR, the build to rent model back then with some of Lehman's assets and talking to some of the publics about it, publics at that time. They weren't able to get it to pencil then, but I do think now there's a bigger market for it as we've seen affordability for sale prices get squeezed. So a lot of people who maybe would have been able to buy 5 years ago will not be able to buy now. Who knows what will happen in the future? And then rental rates have gone up as well. So that means that helps when you're underwriting a project. Now, of
Right.
course, construction costs, land costs have gone up, but it still helps underwrite the project. And there's probably a more receptive market for funding now to that model as well. That was one of the other things. If you were trying to get more specialized funding just after the global financial crisis coming out of there, you didn't have any luck doing that. But now people are more open to that model. So it's fascinating. It's a little scary in some respects. Now, I was a long time renter. I'm a recent home buyer. Not afraid to admit that. You could see how you move into a neighborhood of beautiful single family homes or little duplexes, and you live there. There's a chance you may never buy a home
Right.
because you're just so comfortable there. Not a bad thing. Buying a home's not for everybody, but you could see how it could almost trap you in a respect. But anyway, I've talked enough. What do you think about the
No,
BTR?
all valid points, and there's no right or wrong, and there's no clear answer. I'll just share a few different perspectives, and I would have shared everything that you said. Number one, it's not universal. Different markets have different needs.
Yeah.
If the BTR activity is bringing housing to the market to provide rental housing that's missing, right, and serving a worthwhile need, that's great stuff. From the standpoint of the investors, what's happening is here the builders are saying, look, we can buy land, and instead of turning it into for sale housing, we can create rental housing. We can turn that into more of an investment over time. Well, it just stands to reason that you're also saying, instead of us helping and building product that's going to maybe bring more home buyers into home ownership and allow them over time to increase their financial position, we've now got this institutional investing, right?
Yeah.
To your point, putting together different financial sources for this to fund this stuff, creating returns, tax benefits, all the stuff that's generated here. So it's really tough philosophically. And my gut, anything that's going to make it more difficult for anybody in America, particularly the groups that have struggled with affordability, which continues to get larger and larger. Anything that's going to make it more difficult for the average American to own their own home, have that pride ownership and so on, it just bothers me on a gut level. And so I see the benefits. I also see builders able to balance their production. But it's just really more Wall Street owning turning housing into that commodity. This was something that was kind of the backbone of America. At the same time, if you look at the percentages of home ownership, they really haven't changed all that much, right?
It's so true. The numbers vacillate. It's between
Right.
like 57 down to 52 maybe or something, and I could be
Yeah.
wrong. But it's like a 5% variation from the peak of owners of people owning homes to the trough.
Right.
It's not a huge variation.
Well, it's the same thing that you talked about earlier, all the things that drive up the cost of home building. So builders and developers are trying to find a way to stay in business, to generate fair profits. And so many places we have this resistance. I call it the lifeboat syndrome. People refer to it as NIMBY, right? Not in my
Maybe,
backyard. I call it the lifeboat syndrome. All right, we're all in the lifeboat and we're good. And we don't want anybody else in the lifeboat. And we'll say, people will be fighting the new development coming to town. Well, what's the problem? Well, it's going to create more traffic. And I said, well, why was it okay when they built your home?
Yeah.
It was okay for you to come to town and create more traffic.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to change the character. Well, guess what? The world changes. Who says 100%. The character's perfect now,
No, that's you and I have talked about. So NIMBYism, not in my backyard, is one of the interesting things that doesn't follow political lines.
Right.
So you can have people from both parties be a
That's right.
NIMBY or a YIMBY, which is yes in my backyard. And it's fascinating to me. You'll have a NIMBY Republican saying, "Oh, we need regulations so that we don't have this built here, and I nobody can do this with their house next to me." And it's like, well, Republicans typically want smaller government theoretically and don't want all these regulations. Then you have a Democrat who's a NIMBY who's saying, "Well, I don't want that shelter built down there. I don't want that affordable housing near mine. It's going to ruin my
Exactly.
home values." But yet you're a Democrat and you're supposed to be for social reform. So it's NIMBYism does not follow party lines, and
No.
yeah,
Here's the reality. The big reward, whether people will acknowledge it or not. I mean, we talk about the character, and we talk about traffic, and we talk about crime and safety and so on. The big reward for anyone who's already in the lifeboat to resist development is the value of their homes will continue to grow up because we're just constraining the supply of housing,
yeah,
or through the process, we're driving the cost of land and development, and construction to a higher level.
yeah.
And it just makes it more and more, more and more difficult. So, um,
No, I'm glad to jump in that with you, and I'm glad we're on the same page on that. It'd be interesting if we had different perspectives on that. We don't always agree, but that's one we agree. So there's a couple hellos in here I want to get up there. We've got a hello from Obi-Wan. Thanks for coming out, bud. Appreciate that. We've got Michael Noon. He says we're the best. Hey, we'll take that. Thank you.
wow, I haven't been the
Appreciate
best
that.
very often, so I'm
I know,
enjoying
I
that.
know. Usually we're in trouble for something. And then Roche says, "Good afternoon. Thanks for coming out, Roche. We appreciate it." So pull up another one from Mel. And so Mel's working with investors from Israel buying homes in Columbus, I'm assuming Columbus, Ohio, to rent long term. It's about to explode with Intel and Microsoft coming. So investors are coming from everywhere. Um, and then let's see if there's more to it. The comment, rest of the comment got cut off. But yeah, I mean, look, there is definitely a need for rental housing,
Absolutely.
and investors there. When you were talking about institutional investors owning the rental properties, a lot of people look at that negatively, and it is frustrating to see money going from Main Street to Wall Street like that. Um, but it's not like being a landlord is a bad thing, especially for a lot of mom and
No,
pop
not at
landlords.
all.
That's part of the American dream. So part of the American dream, it seems, is to own your own home, and then some folks want to own investment property. So it's not that we're against landlords. We think
Oh,
it's
not at all.
great. Heck, half my content is about helping landlords and tenants.
Yeah, I
But
think it's about, honestly, I think it's just about what the real need is in a marketplace.
yeah,
And it seems to me that just over the natural flow of things, you can have a swing one way or another. But I agree with you too. And at the same time, the fact that large builders and institutional investors have gotten involved, there's a certain amount of efficiency. They often maintain and support the people
yeah,
living there
that's
at
a
a
good
very
point.
high level.
Yeah,
They're able, in many cases, building a different product than they would build on a custom home or a high-end home basis, just a more efficient overall cost home. They are getting people into housing, particularly single-family housing, they would never be able to afford to enjoy otherwise. So I agree with all that. And the last thing I'll say is that there's psychologically, we're seeing reports and study, and we're finding more and more people say, you know what, I don't want to own. I'm happy renting.
yeah.
I like the idea that it gives me some freedom in my life. I like the idea that someone else comes in and is responsible for maintenance and a lot of those kinds of issues. So it's becoming more and more a lifestyle that's a chosen lifestyle. It's not just about affordability. Right?
100%. Yeah. And I agree with that. It does make sense. So, I've got 4 kids and we're going to be here for a while. So, it makes sense for us to own. And we were lucky enough to be able to be in a position to buy this particular house that we're in. It was absolute luck at the
Yeah,
time. I negotiated the deal, put it together, bought it from the landlord, blah, blah, blah. And
right.
I'll release content on it. But it was at the right place at the right time. But it's not the end all be all. At the end of the day, a home is what you make of it.
That's right.
whether you own it or not. So, which I know sounds funny coming from a real estate agent and a builder, former
Right,
builder, but
right,
but all these people put all this pressure on themselves. Oh, I have to buy, and then end up compromising just to buy something
right.
when. And then who knows? Gets a job transfer in a year or two, and they've got to get. Whoa, I'm getting all excited. Got to get
Well, I
rid of
give
that
you
albatross.
a little
So
statistic there. So a study that I saw not too long ago indicated we all know that we had a lot of house buying, a lot of buying and selling going on during the pandemic, right? And a statistic I saw not too long ago, study found that roughly 75% of all buyers during that window of the pandemic, when we saw those numbers climb, roughly 75% have buyer's remorse. And they feel that they either A, paid too much and or just didn't buy the right home, the best home for themselves, because there was a lot of panic buying. So
yeah,
that's right on the money with your point. And I know I've seen you many times in your business, which I'm so proud of, where you'll tell people, look, honestly, it's up to you to sort it out, and I'll work very, very hard for you. But this may not be the best move for you. This may not be the best time,
yeah. Well,
And
thank you.
so, unlike so many agents that find a way to get out the duct
Yeah.
tape and put a deal together any which way, you
Yeah.
know,
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, no is one of the most important and potentially positive things
yeah,
that we can say as a real estate agent. All right, so it's hard to believe it's already been 40 minutes, and there's
right.
actually people still watching. I think that's the
That's what's
thing
hard to believe, right?
that's the part of it. It's hard to believe. Mel did have to go. She says goodbye.
And she said goodbye.
But one of the things before we end this is let's talk about where things are headed. And I know a lot of it's crystal ball stuff,
Yeah.
but first, show me that cool tool that you have
Oh, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
related to AI. Can
Okay.
you can you
Yeah,
share
I'll
that?
do that. And I just wanted to interject because you started going down the road of remodeling, and
Oh
then
yeah,
we got down another road. Now, just very, very quickly, um, we believe, and I know you when I say we, it's you, it's Teresa, it's we're working with the leaders of the industries. We got CEOs, folks across the industry, all excited about where we're going with our residential remodeling specialist program.
yeah,
And what this is recognizing is, the average age of home in America, we said about 42 years. 80% of all the homes in America are be somewhere between 20, 25 years and older. That's a massive segment of
crazy.
homes that need something. I'll talk to some folks who'll say the average home in our area is, 74 years or 68 years or whatever. So we know there's a massive inventory. So we've got a shortage of an inventory, and most people, as far as available, a
Yeah,
lot of that could be resolved by inventory that most people don't want to fool with right now, mostly can't visualize, right? To taking us where we're going here. They can't
yep,
visualize it. They don't know how to get from here to there. What we're doing is we're training thousands of real estate professionals to take it to a new level in understanding remodeling, the planning process, all the steps in the process, how to find great contractors, how to finance it, how to avoid problems, budgeting, legal considerations, all of these things. And one of the most important things we're doing is we're encouraging the agents, instead of doing a CMA that has been done for years, right? Competitive market analysis. We're saying, hey, that's great, it's valuable, but it's pretty old school. We came up with our proprietary RVA, remodeling value analysis. And that's about analyzing the value of the home as it sits. But as a homeowner, I'd like to know, are there a handful of strategic improvements I could make right now that would enhance the value of my home, right? Would make
yeah,
it more valuable if I were to sell it. If I'm thinking about remodeling, and by the way, it's estimated today, a house study found that roughly 90% of all homeowners over the next 2 years want to do some substantial amount of remodeling to their home. That's a massive number. It's a huge sea change in people. Most people, you can watch HGTV all day long. They don't necessarily know where to start. They don't know what they don't know. And the problem is, many, without the right guidance, without having this remodeling value analysis, if they move forward and without some of the guidance, right, they'll find they make mistakes. The costs go up. Maybe they don't fully visualize the end result. But worse yet, if they end up upside down in the investment they've made. Now, some folks will say, I've lived here for 40 years, and they can carry me out of this house in a box. I don't care. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to overbuild or over remodel. I don't care. But most people don't want to be upside down in the equity of their home. They want to be in a position to have that flexibility. So I just want, I know you're excited about, I'm excited. This is a beta we have. Let me
Yeah, go ahead and share that, and we'll jump
share
into
my
that. So
screen. Yeah,
yeah, in that remodeling vein, so that your course helps real estate agents um, be able to guide homeowners if they're
correct.
gonna, not if even if they're gonna sell. Like, don't think of it just for
No,
having me come in to list your home. Like, reach out to a real estate agent like me who's had this training, and others who've had this training. We'll come in and give you our opinion on what you need to do on a house that you're not even going to sell. That's part of being a forever agent
right?
and being an agent who's there to give guidance. Like, reach out to me for vendors and other things like that. I'm not just there to list and sell homes.
That
And then
makes sense.
if you're looking to buy something, having that perspective is helpful as well. Inventory is low. Maybe you find something that is 80% where you need it to be or 90% where you need it to be. And we, as an agent who have this training and have this background, we can help you figure out that 10 to 20% to get it to exactly where you want it. So no, I think it's a spectacular training. It's something I take for granted because I grew up with Papa Den and
Well,
on job sites. But some agents don't have that background. You've never swung a hammer. And then the other side of this would be for investors.
right,
So, as an investor, make sure either you're working with a real estate agent who's had this training,
right.
or you take the training so you understand remodeling. Being a flipper, all those $5,000 ridiculously expensive courses that run through a bunch of stuff, you could buy this course for far less,
Right.
better understand the pieces and parts of a home, understand what the remodeling process is, where to save the money, really save the money, and potentially have a deal pencil when it wouldn't, and do the right upgrades. Anyway, see, you got me all excited. Look what you did.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is really exciting. And I have to tell you, honestly, we're fired up. Many of the people we're working with will say this is one of the most exciting new things in real estate. And Christian, I know you use this in your work with sellers and
Yeah,
buyers.
yeah,
But the question is, do you want to sell your home wholesale or retail?
yeah.
Right? We can clean out the garage. We can, throw a little paint here and stage this, put it on the market, and hopefully we'll get some great offers and off we go. Or do you want to take a look at some strategic improvements where you're going to get a return on that investment? And I know you've had some incredible success stories.
Yeah.
I know you had a client invested $40,000 in improvements and turned around after that $40,000 investment, put $75,000 worth of additional profit in their pocket
Yeah.
because of the guidance you provided them.
That was
That's
a fun one. That was
that's
that
powerful stuff. Same thing with
tiny
buyers.
house.
If you want to buy wholesale or retail, but go ahead, Chris. Did you want to add to
No,
that?
no, no.
Okay.
Exactly. Those are the things. I'm okay. Now I'm excited for you to show
Okay.
this because
Okay. So
I haven't
this
actually
is
seen it in action yet. So this is the
okay.
first time. So I hope it
This
works.
Yeah, so this is the beta. We're just starting to launch this across the industry. It's a tool right now that many of our agents are going to be able to bring to their clients and help with the whole concept. The challenge is visualizing
Yes.
what can be done with this property, what's going to look like before and after. And even with agents and even with designers who are really skilled, they have a very difficult time getting their clients to truly see what they're talking about, what this is going to look like. So we know AI is sweeping the industry, and Christian, you and I are excited about it. There's a lot of people out there afraid of it, but there's no reason to be, right? It's great
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm working with a fella who's just a genius in artificial intelligence, created this product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. Here's a good one. I'm just going to pick a home. Now, you can just take photos of your home, or if you're looking for design ideas, you could go online and just grab photos and just play with different styles. We're going to take a look at the outside of this home here. So
Where did you find this lovely? This is like a
isn't it pretty?
1920 shotgun home.
Yeah, but
Do
you
you?
want to know, I want you to think about it. How many homes are there across this country that look exactly like that?
It's true. Well,
And
and shotgun homes are called shotgun homes for a reason that nobody seems to really know, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, Papa Den. Shotgun homes, which is basically you go in the front door and you can see the back door at the
all the way
same
to the back,
time.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
do remember that, yeah.
the story of why it's called a shotgun. They don't know for sure. It could be because you could potentially shoot out the back, but it's
Hmm.
such a silly name. But okay, so you've got this exterior
So I've got
picture.
this exterior. Let me see, exterior house architecture.
Okay, and now
Um,
what are you doing? You're picking a
you just pick a
theme,
design theme. So, for example, I could pick tropical here just for the heck of it.
and then
And we
it's
let
gonna.
the AI work. And I've timed this. It takes typically about 10 to 15 seconds. So, of course, when you're looking at a computer screen for 10 to 15 seconds, you say, wow, that takes a little time. But
So here's some questions coming up. Obi-Wan is curious if we're talking if this is Chat GPT. Yeah, Chat
yeah,
GPT you can use and I've used, but this is a whole different tool. So this is that same shotgun house
yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
tropical
So
theme.
look,
Oh, and there's a few of them.
you get four of them at a shot here.
That's amazing.
Pun intended, at a shot. Now, does that look a little more desirable, right?
It does, except that's also taken over the neighbor's lot, which
Well,
maybe
yeah.
you
So,
did.
and that's one of the points I don't want to make. Let me generate a new design. So here's the thing with AI. So this is question: is this Chat GPT? Behind the scenes, this is a higher level of the normal Chat GPT,
Ooh, that's
but
nice.
it's also done a tremendous amount of learning. And this UI created all around design. So it's really crazy what they've created. So what you'll see is it'll do some crazy things sometimes. It'll go ahead
Okay, wait, go
and
back up.
grab the house.
Go back up. One more. One more.
This one here.
Could you build that in the front there? Were you when you were back in your contractor days? Do you think you
Oh
could do
yeah.
that detail?
To that point, what's so funny is I grew up, man. I grew up laying out and cutting rafters and hip rafters and jack rafters. And then, as trusses came on, we have all these carpenters who couldn't cut a rafter if their life depended on it. But that
I
kind of
like
stuff was fun.
Rocher's calling these exotic Hawaiian style. I like that.
Okay. All right. I like that. Here, let's change the style on it just for the heck of it. Southwestern, you want something like that? What do you see here, Chris?
I
Anything Mediterranean? Let me try that. Just
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love
that's a pretty
Mediterranean stuff.
popular style. Let's generate some Mediterranean. But we were starting to talk about as I started to play with this, it's like a game. It's fun. Some of the designs that come up are just absolutely ridiculous. You say, "Are you absolutely kidding me?" Right?
Yeah.
And some of them, like on the interiors, sometimes.
Here, look at this one though. So this is actually pull up the original house. This is actually crazy doable for an improvement to do to a house. It's a matter of changing out the roof, and then there's a few other details. And look at the difference in the styles with just a few simple changes.
Now, so if you're a buyer and you look at this first home, and Christian says, "Man, I tell you what, we could probably negotiate a really good price on this," and they say,
Yeah,
"Well,
get it wholesale,
yeah,
like
of
Obi-Wan
course,
says.
because the Beverly Hillbillies are living here, right?" But
Yeah, Obi-Wan says he wants to buy wholesale. So we'll get you this wholesale 1920s shotgun.
so, and then what's great is you can go in here and you can say, "Well, let me try Mediterranean, let me try coastal." Now, to that point of silly things, I went ahead and took some photos of my own place here because on the interior, it'll redo furniture and stuff. I don't know if you want me to take the time to show an interior, but
Yeah, if you yeah, go ahead. And
so
then
there's some
we'll
exteriors. Look at how clean
that's
these
gorgeous.
are,
Yeah.
right? Or
That's
Chris, I
simple
know you
stuff.
work with flippers. You sit down with a flipper and say, "Let me show you a few ideas." By the way, what happens up here in the history, you can go in here, all the stuff you've created, I've got pages of them here, are stored. Look at that's that same house with some
That's
stone on it
beautiful.
there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, right? Um, but anyway, the visualization is just absolutely so powerful. And again, whether it's sellers or buyers, or like you say, anybody who's thinking about making improvements to their home, um, let's take a style similar to a house down the street you like, and let's go to town. All right, I got to get another photo in
Yeah,
here.
do the interior and then we'll let
Yeah.
everybody go.
All
And then
right.
we'll we might have to do just another. Let us know in the comments if you want just another kind of on a couple AI tools where Papa
Yeah.
Dan and I
Okay.
talk.
Here's one here.
I'm gonna while you're doing that,
Yeah,
I'll come back to this one. Go ahead and get rendering. So what is this? This is a bedroom.
just a bedroom. Krish, I've got design modern, contemporary,
Go to Art Deco. I want to know what
farmhouse. Okay.
I'm an Art Deco fan
Yeah, what is
secretly.
this thing?
I don't, who knows what it's going to do though, because Art Deco tends to be an exterior style. Okay, while it's doing that, I'm going to pull up a comment from this subscriber. SB9 and investors in unit. We are going to do more content on SB9, just not today, but definitely that's a great question and we'll address it. Look at what, go back to that first picture. That was hysterical. Look at that.
That's a bit
Amazing.
much.
Yeah.
Kind of like a scary hotel room, isn't it? There.
But it's
This one's
spectacular.
cleaner. This one's
That's,
cleaner.
yeah.
Welcome to the disco, right? Isn't it
That's
funny?
actually very pretty there. All right,
Yeah.
pick another theme. That was maybe a
Yeah,
little
let
too
me take
crazy.
here. I'm gonna try coastal. Oh, I was
Yeah.
starting to tell you, I took pictures of my house here. You know, Krisha, the dining room, family room area, and I chose coastal. And next thing you know, it showed I was on the ocean. It had outside all my windows. I was right on. Well, here
They
you
did
go.
it there.
We did it there too. So, I guess if you want a coastal theme, that'll get you there. But you know,
Yeah, that's a little optimistic. I mean, well, truth be told, you could go ahead and paint set up something outside the door if you wanted that same look outside your door.
yeah, I'll do one more here and then we'll go. But I think you get the idea. Now, here's what's also cool is see the area here. This is for what we call with prompts with AI.
Okay.
So look at
Oh
this.
wow.
Holy cow. This looks like out of an architectural magazine, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And this is actually pretty doable. Some of this stuff.
Yeah, totally. So you could put in the prompts here black accents or blue color scheme, add a pool table, those kinds of things. And again,
That's
sometimes
cool.
it'll do something wacky where I'll add a pool table on top of the bed. That's not necessarily what we had in mind. And then there's
Some people.
some people would love it. Yeah. Then there's an opportunity here, and this is an advanced level that people can have access to. But you go in here and choose to furnish empty space. It's more powerful as far as the prompts. What it starts to do, it'll mask the floor, the
That's
ceiling, the
fascinating.
wall. Yeah, and it allows you to have even more flexibility. So anyway, I thought that was pretty exciting. And as I indicated too, the other piece here.
That's definitely where things are headed. Just making it easier for visualization, and then at some point in time, like we've talked about, and like Chat GPT can do. So Chat GPT, you say, "Hey, I want recipes for an entire week." It'll generate a bunch of dinners for you, the
Right.
recipes. It'll give you the shopping list. That's where we see things headed for real estate. The remodeling jobs, even probably the acquisition of. I mean, could you imagine with a new home builder, you like just give them a list, like
Right.
type in a list of a few odds and ends you want in your house, it generates something, give that to your builder, and they can go to town with it.
I think it's, you just say, where can my imagination take this? And I was explaining to someone who can't get their head around it at all. And I said, for example, you pick a topic and you Google it. And now you're given all these different sites that have keywords, and some of them are technical and some of them aren't, and some of them are misses. You now spend how much time sorting through trying to become knowledgeable and put something together of meaning.
Yeah.
Instead, if any of you haven't tried this, just do a search, typically a more complicated search, in Chat GPT and watch where it will do all that work for you.
Yeah.
And write out a much more lucid summary, right, of what you might find. So applying that to all these other activities is pretty exciting.
Well, it is. We're coming up on an hour. Thank you, Papa Den, for being here and sharing. I think we're going to have to do this again
I
because
hope so.
we just scratched the surface on lots of different topics. I didn't know where we would end up.
I didn't either. And we never know. We never
And
know.
we're here in the future. Does it feel a whole lot different here in the future? That's where we've ended up.
Exactly. Yeah, we didn't get too much more into the future. We got a little bit into it, but
Yeah.
there's some exciting things coming.
Well, no, thank you again for being here. And what we'll do is we'll include a link to the website, thesellnewhomes.com. That'll be in the description. So if people want to check that out. And I encourage more than just agents to take a look at it. If you're thinking of becoming a real estate agent or starting to become a real estate agent, you can hit the ground running with their training. Again, I take it for granted. I grew up with this. So it's helped me leverage my career to a higher level. And I still have to take the training because he's always coming up with more great ideas that he's sneaking in there. So it's definitely worth doing. So leave your questions below. We're going to have more content coming. Like I said, we'll talk more about AI. We'll talk about the SB9 as well. I know people are dying for more of that content. And make sure you subscribe, like, share. I have an email newsletter, all that stuff. But in the meantime, have a great weekend, and we will see you again soon. You, Papa Dan, and we'll see all of you guys again soon.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Sean.
coming.
See you.
Appreciate it.